Hi, I'm David. I'm a systems engineer at JAMP. I think we're all here to talk about self-service, which hopefully some of you are using or are interested in using. I started using Casper before self-service was available. We were in the middle of a CS3 rollout, so we were doing that automatically, and it worked great. Although I did find that a couple of people restarted in the middle of it, which nobody ever restarts until you don't want them to. So we had a few problems with that. When CS4 came out, we actually had self-service, and basically we just put it up there, sent out an email, let people know. So it worked out great, and I'm going to hand this over to Keaton, and he can take it from there.
All right, well, yeah, thank you everyone for coming here. So yeah, I'm Keaton. I was actually Emily's account manager, so worked with her pretty closely here. And yeah, she's going to do a little talking about self-service and getting that customized just for your organization.
Thank you. I will put that down. I apparently have another, it sounds like it's working. Can everyone hear me okay? Hooray. Hello, so my name is Emily, as Keaton mentioned, and today we're talking about branding self-service for your organization. Now, I'm not looking to blow people's minds with this presentation. Part of my goal is to show you that it's relatively simple to take the self-service app and make it look like it belongs to your company. I'm a big fan of user experience and user interaction, and if you think about it, the one thing that your users are actually going to see is the self-service app if you're using it with your Casper rollout. So taking it, making it look like your own will encourage the user to look at it because they'll recognize it as something that belongs to the company that they work for. But I'll get into some of that kind of holistic Casper experience in a bit here. In case you don't know what I look like, that's what I look like. Go over the agenda real quick, and then I'll give you some background about why I did this and what the thought was behind branding it and all that good stuff. So why sell self-service? Why would you want to actually sell self-service to users? And chances are you have some really good ideas about that already, but I'll talk about that a little bit and why I wanted to sell self-service to my users at Volusion. Why branding self-service worked for my organization. Some of you may or may not be in similar situations where you buy into Casper as a way to manage your Mac fleet, but you already have a bunch of computers out there. And you may be in a business organization like myself where you don't get a reset period where you can take all the machines back and you can reset them the way you want them and kind of redeploy them. I didn't really have that option. So I had to find a way to get my users to do my work for me and enroll in Casper so I could start managing their stuff, which, if you have users out there and they're admins of their own computers, chances are they are happy to not have you do anything to their machines. So how do you get them to be like, okay, manage my machine for me? You tell them you're not managing it, which I'll get to. I'll go through the workflow of how I customize self-service. So I went through and redid this workflow with 9.5 because some of the imagery did change between 9.3 and 9.5, which is kind of how my upgrade path went at Volusion. If you've looked at my blog, which I know I've gotten some feedback and people have looked through my workflow there, it's a little different because some of the imagery has changed. And I've actually noticed that with the update to self-service, particularly the imagery that's used in the icons, you may have noticed if you upgraded to 9.5 that the icons, almost all the icons for all the apps changed. They're kind of round and more, modernized a little bit. They're a little sleeker looking. That also happened in self-service, so you might notice that some of the imagery looks a little different. Just a few general tips on user adoption and getting them to enroll themselves in the Casper suite for you to help their machines, and helping yourself with self-service. I'm a big fan of putting a bunch of stuff in self-service that I want to use if I do have to touch a machine. And the self-service session that happened yesterday was all about that, and I was like, yes, someone else does it too. It's not just me. It felt awesome. So you can make self-service something that you can use when you're helping users and give yourself tools. And if you're in the situation like me, where the rest of your team are Windows guys and they think Macs are just kind of cute, you can say, hey, if you need to find this thing, just open self-service and it'll be in there in the IT staff category. So it's there for you, so you don't have to dig through application support to try to go in and find the directory utility, things like that. All right, so why sell self-service? Chances are users aren't interested in device management. We adopted Casper because basically what our workflow was for our Mac users at Volusion, because it's a Windows environment predominantly, was Windows help desk guys did their best to put everything on the Mac that the user needed. They bound it to Active Directory. They let the user log in, and then they ticked the box to let them administer their machines, and then off the machine went, and we never heard from it again until something went wrong with it, right? We didn't have any oversight. We couldn't see what they were installing on the machines. So for us, Casper was, oh my gosh, we can finally have reporting and inventory on our Macs. Thank goodness. Chances are your users aren't really all that eager for you to spy on their computers, right? Which we probably should be if it's in a work environment, but every once in a while you'll see Steam or BitTorrent clients on a machine and you want to be able to say something about it. But you also don't want to be Big Brother, or at least I don't. I don't want my users to think that I am trying to micromanage them. I want them to feel comfortable with their machines, to be able to get their work done. But I also want to be able to know if they're doing stuff with their machine that they shouldn't be. So you kind of have to balance that a little bit. And chances are, users are probably going to be happy to help themselves. I'm a big fan of empowering users to get the most out of their machines and to be able to troubleshoot issues and help themselves. The great thing about self-service is that you are giving users tools to better their machine. If you think about it, the reason applications were created in the first place for operating systems was to give people a chance to work on things they needed to do. Self-service gives them a chance to further that, right? You give them tools and features within self-service that better their machine and can help them help themselves. And of course, there's going to be a little bit of hand-holding or continually reminding users that self-service is on the computer, but after a while they start learning and they start going to it. So let me tell you just a little bit about Volusion. I promise I'm not going to talk about Volusion this entire session. My workflow does not use Volusion imagery, so you don't have to keep staring at the little V. We've got about 500 employees. About a year and a half ago, we only had 280 employees, so we grew a lot over the last year and a half to 2 years. We're roughly a third Mac users, mostly Windows users, and our Mac users are, if you're in the business sphere, probably the same way. Your product development folks, some in marketing, visual design, user experience, folks like that using Photoshop mostly. They're all our Mac users. But also our CEO, our founder, our VP of marketing, our VP of product development, and a lot of upper management are on Macs also. And I think that's starting to be a trend in business, that a lot of upper management, I'm seeing nods, so I'm not the only one noticing this, right, are on Macs. So you want to particularly make sure that those folks feel supported, because they are the ones that are in charge and most likely ensure your paycheck. So you want them to be happy with their machines. Predominantly designers. And part of the idea behind giving these users administrative rights on their machines when they were initially deployed before Casper was that they have all sorts of crazy tools and features and things that they use, particularly in development and design, that we don't want to have to touch their machine every 5 minutes, every day, when they're adding something to Visual Studio and need to have some kind of approval or anything like that. So our Windows users were admins, so our Mac users were also admins. They customize their machines quite a bit and install software that they need. And we don't really want to impinge on that, but we also want to know that they're supported and that we see that their machines still exist, which is helpful with Casper. You can see it's checking in and they're still using it, which is great. We have some core values. Keep it simple, get it done, rock the golden rule. This all sounds like tech startup stuff to you guys, I'm sure. Deliver wow experiences, both to your employees and to merchants and clients that you're working with. Innovate and embrace change. That's my favorite core value at Volusion, because anytime there's an update to software or an OS update, you've got the people that really want to innovate and embrace that change, or the people that are terrified of innovating and embracing change. And you kind of have to balance those things, which I will be talking about a little bit later with how we've used self-service with our folks. And then have fun and kick butt. And for me, using Photoshop is really fun, which is part of why I really enjoyed doing this self-service branding experience. I'll talk a little bit about using Photoshop with this workflow in a bit too. All of these things, the independent spirit, the tech startup mentality, the having fun, kicking butt, doing what you need on your computer, not always helpful when you're on corporate IT. because you get the weirdest issues because of some plugin you've never heard of that works with Outlook, that talks to Marketo, that you just have never heard of before, and it's not working and you have to help them. But you try to make the best of it, and I think Casper and self-service really gives you the tools that you need to make the best of those situations. So kind of go over why I branded self-service. So our machines were already deployed to users with admin privileges. So it wasn't like, hey, enroll and you'll be able to do all these things through self-service. It was, please join this so that I can know your computer exists. Right, that was kind of the idea behind it for me, at least. That tech startup mentality and relatively tech-savvy users, if I tell them, hey, we've got this new management system now, you have to opt in, they're probably not going to. But if I say, hey, this new tool is coming to Volusion called self-service, and all you have to do is go to this URL, log in with your credentials, it'll get instantly installed on your computer, you'll have access to all sorts of apps. Anytime you request any software purchase for yourself, it's gonna be there, so you have to go there to get it. If you're having problems with your computer, there will be tools in there for you to run to help yourself, so you don't have to wait for us to come and help you, right? Trying to get people to see that there's a benefit of having it on their computer, because again, that's the thing that they see. They see self-service. So that's really the only interaction they're going to have with Casper. So why not use it as a perk? Volusion's huge on perks, right? We have, beer on Friday afternoons, and there's snacks, and we have this thing called the Volusion 15, because the first year you work there, you end up putting on 15 pounds because you eat all this food all the time, right? Volusion perks are huge. It's sold to new hires. We've got all these great perks, so why not, when you're in that new hire orientation and there's a Mac user in there, be like, hey, we've got this great perk called Volusion Self-Service on your Mac. And I'm sure I'm not the only person in here that your HR asks you to come in and talk to new hires or new teachers or anything like that about the technology at their disposal. Why not sell them self-service right there, day one? Hey, we've got this great tool and you're gonna love using it, and because you're on a Mac, you get this, it's special to you, right? Sell it to them. I'm a bit of a self-service evangelist if you haven't gotten that impression already. I will make a note that right here, so when I first started branding self-service, I was like, oh, I'll call it the Volusion App Store. That's awesome, because it's an app store for Volusion employees. It was so confusing for people to be like, hey, it's in the App Store. The App Store or the Volusion App Store? Why, we don't really buy anything out of the App Store that's the Volusion App Store. So I ended up changing the name to Volusion Self-Service, which I think kind of reflects the app a little bit better, just kind of going through some of the growing pains of figuring out the best way to get my users to want to use this stuff. Okay, so we'll talk workflow now. I've talked enough about Volusion. Let me just show you what our self-service app looks like, and then I will move on to going through the workflow of how I built it out. So what do you need to change visually in self-service to make it look like it belongs to your business or school or organization? The name in the menu bar up at the top, there will be little arrows, and I hope you can see. I know this stuff will end up online, so if you need to see things more closely, you'll be able to see it like today or tomorrow. They've been putting it up pretty quickly. So Volusion Self-Service up in the menu bar. The app title itself, which is going to show up in the actual application window, as well as the top link in the plugins on the left-hand side. The little icon in the progress bar. The logo that is next to the user and password login. Now, if you're on older versions of Casper, you may notice that this imagery is a little different. It used to be kind of a big rectangular splash image, and the workflow that I put up on my blog initially used that older image. This is way easier now. It's super simple just to take imagery and just make it uniform across everything, which is great. The icon that'll end up showing up in the dock and in the self-service plugin, that top one, which gets you kind of back to the home page. Right? And the plugins. Plugins are huge. If you don't use the plugins, you really should, because that's the first thing that users are going to go in there and see. Throw everything in there that an employee at your business or organization would want. HR portal, help desk tickets, we use SharePoint, so SharePoint sites, wikis. We're big on Twitter because we're an e-commerce company, so the Twitter accounts. Put in stuff in there that they're going to want to look at. Building maps are great. If your HR at your organization makes building maps, put those in there too. Especially if you're in a big building, or if you're like us and you're split between multiple buildings. They're like, you know, I have a meeting in this random conference room I've never heard of. Like, oh, open up the self-service app and there's a map in there, you can go find it. You know, give them tools that they're going to want to use on a daily basis. And of course, within there, you're going to want to throw in stuff that users like. With the upgrade in 9.5, you can actually link to App Store apps. Like, you can actually go in Casper, search for an App Store app that users might like to use. Volusioneers love Evernote. So for a while, I was doing that thing where you build an Evernote package and you replace the Mac App Store receipt in that little folder inside the contents, and then you push it, but then they don't get updates. Now they can just get it from the App Store. So you can think of it too as self-service being like a curated collection of apps that your employees can use. I also, not really all that brilliant of an idea, but I've found that my users, when they open self-service, didn't know what the categories were. They're like, oh, I went in, but I didn't see that thing in there. Like, oh, there's this whole bank of categories on the right-hand side that I had no idea were there. So I put this giant featured folder icon in self-service. It said, browse categories for more apps, so that maybe they would see that and see if there's more stuff in there. As you probably know, users have selective reading. Sometimes they will read what you tell them, and sometimes they don't. So why not give them extra help? Okay, so here is a very basic, this is the self-service app that you download from your JSS. Of course, I added my own plugins because why not follow me on Twitter and read my blog? So just to go through it again, we've got the application names, we've got the menu name, the dock icon and the inner app, the plugin icon, the icon in the progress bar, the icon on the login, right, and your plugins. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So step one, getting the self-service app. May or may not know that you can just go right into the JSS and download a copy for yourself. And that's what we're going to play with. So you go to computer management, head over to self-service. You'll get a big old download icon. Click on that. You will end up wherever your files download on your machine by default with a .tar zipped file. You double click it, you get your self-service app. Changing the name of the application is super easy. All you have to do is Command-I or get info, open up the little get info dialog. Right? So there's my app, there's my dialog. You can see it's called self-service.app. I'm going to rename it Amazonia Self-Service because why wouldn't Themyscirans have Macs and self-service? So now it's Amazonia Self-Service. Now the next trick here is going to be the menu bar, which I don't know, for people that are on Jamf Nation quite a bit, I posted when I was initially going through this workflow and I was like, I have no idea how to get that menu bar to change. It's not controlled by the .app name, it's actually within the info.plist within the package contents of the application. So there's this little bit right here and it's called CF bundle something or another. CF bundle name, that's the one. And that's what shows up in that menu bar at the top. There is a handy terminal command, and it's been posted on the forum, it's posted on my blog. I did not come up with this, so I'm not a scripting expert, but there are very nice people on Jamf Nation who help out with stuff like this that I'm not quite as good at. And you basically go in, you write to the plist with elevated privileges, and then you adjust the permissions with the chmod, right, to make it readable by the application. Some of you that may have done this before may have found that you went in and you manually went into the info.plist and you typed in the new name and then the package wouldn't open. It kept saying that it was damaged, right? This is how you get around that. By just having the terminal go in, look for that bit of information, change it for you, then make sure the permissions are adjusted so that the app can actually talk to that plist file after you've edited it. Once you do that, voila! Amazonia Self-Service. I've got Amazonia Self-Service in the menu bar. I've got it in the application name. It's what users are going to see in their applications folder. Super cool. So next we'll talk about the icon, which is the dock icon and the thing that shows up in the plugins on the left-hand side. So within the, if you right-click on any application on a Mac, you can show package contents, and within there is all of the resources that that application uses when it tries to launch. Right? Within the resources folder in there, contents, resources, there are two self-service.icns files. Those are the ones that you want to adjust to give yourself an icon for your dock and for that plugin link on the top left side. So that default icon, y'all are probably familiar with, right? It looks like this now. It's been updated quite a bit in 9.5 between, like previously to 9.5 and then up to 9.5. They updated the icon quite a bit. What I like to do, I never like to go into something and just start changing it within the folders, within the applications. I copy things and I back them up in like 4 places so I can play around with them and then copy them back when I'm done. So what I like to do is just take that self-service.icns, I put it in my pictures folder, because why not? Because it's a pictures folder, right? And that way I can open it, I can look at it, I can copy and paste, I can start playing around with it. Within your preferred visual imagery editing app, I'm a big fan of Photoshop, so here's Photoshop. You can use pixlr.com, you can use photoshop.com/tools. There are quite a bit of free versions out there if you don't have access to Creative Cloud or Adobe applications for yourself to use. The size of this self-service.icns is 512 by 512, so it's not huge. You don't have to worry about super high resolution, because if you think about it, most of the time those icons are pretty small on the screen. So what I did was I just tried to emulate it as best I could. The background is transparent, so I made sure my background was transparent. There's a giant circle, and then within it, a gradient to give it some rounding, some shape. There's a gradient tool that's pretty easy to use in Photoshop. You can use the eyedropper tool to select colors, so you can match colors, to do all sorts of stuff like that. Chances are if you had an organization that has people that use Photoshop, they could show you in a few clicks how to do some of this stuff if you're not comfortable with doing it yourself. Once you have that, you just save a copy of it. I save all of the PSD Photoshop files so that in the event that I want to update something, if I want to change coloring, if your company changes its logo and then you need to go in and update things accordingly, or you feel that need to, like I always do, you've got PSD files with layers, and you can just take the old logo out, put the new one in, resize it, create your new imagery. If you save templates, it's much easier to update things. The trick with that is now, how do I get it into the .icns file, which is kind of a weird extension. It's not a native one to a lot of photo editing tools. Fortunately, there are some handy free apps out there. The one that I used for this example is Image2ICNS. If you just search for it on Google, you'll find it. It's a free download. Hopefully not packed with malware or anything like that, because it's one of those weird free things that you find online, which is probably not the best thing to download on a computer. But this was a test environment, so I didn't impact anything really. All you do is drag your file in, and it'll need to be a PNG or a JPEG or some kind of more friendly internet format. And then this spits out a .icns file. It's super handy. And you'll notice too that the .icns file actually has layers within it. Depending on how it's scaled, it'll pull a different layer so that the quality of the image is retained. So what the Image2ICNS app does is it gives you all the different sizes. The 512, the 128, the 84 by 84, all those different standard icon sizes. It builds them, it layers them, and it saves them in a file for the computer to use. There are actually 2 .icns files that are used within self-service. And you'll want to basically copy the one that you create and make a duplicate, which I'll show you in a second. This step, admittedly, is a bit of a mystery to me, and people that actually develop apps may understand it more than I do. But if you go into the resources of the application and you just replace the imagery, sometimes you won't get the right dock icon, or the icon won't display and you'll get a question mark. It's because of this preview version that's in that get info. It's like a cached version of the .icns file that the system uses when you go to dialogues like get info, or it wants to pull quick information about an application. So really all you have to do to replace it, and chances are if you've played around with icons on your computer, you've probably done this before, and you probably have users that do it too. You copy the image that you want, you click on that icon in the get info window, and then you just hit paste, and it writes over that image with the new image, which is super easy. It's like mind-bogglingly easy. But you still want to make sure that you go into the application bundle with your 2 versions of that .icns file, and you replace them. And you'll see in there that I have now, you can tell by the timestamp, right, that I've got all these other default versions of files in there, and then now I've got my 2 new .icns files. Something that's probably important to point out in this workflow is that matching the naming of all of the icons and things that you're replacing is really important. because the applications are looking for specific file names. It's like building a web page. You can go in and you can refer to images and you can put images in the web page, but if you change the name of the image, the HTML doesn't know what you're talking about anymore and it won't display anything. So making sure the names stay the same is really important. Now when I open my app, you'll see my dock icon and my plugin icon are now technically the Wonder Girl logo, not the Wonder Woman logo, because that one wasn't working all that well. But now I've got some new imagery going for my Amazonia self-service. We'll look at the progress bar icon next. This one actually got a lot easier to update with the most recent version of self-service that was released with Casper 9.5. It used to be two either TIFFs or pings, I forget what type of icon or what kind of file it was. Now there's just one TIFF in there and it's called jslogo/selfservice.tiff. So all you need to do is make the one. It's tiny, it's 84 by 84. And it's really important that it's a square because it has to fit within those dimensions. It basically does 100% width, 100% height for those of you that know your HTML and CSS. So if you make an image that's 84 by 70, so it's 84 wide and 70 high, it'll stretch it to fill the space. So make sure you stick with the square with this. I had a heck of a time finding an icon that was going to work for this example. The Volusion icon's so easy. It's just a little V. You can see it from anywhere. I used this W logo. It doesn't show up all well in the app, unfortunately, but it kind of gives you an idea. Same thing with those other .icns files. You just want to replace them. Drag the TIFF in, and then in your app you'll see I've got a new icon in my progress bar. So next we'll talk about the login logo. Now, conceptually how self-service works is it's actually like a mini browser. Right? You've got this application that opens, and then within the main window is actually data that's sitting on your JSS. The web pages, all of the plugins and everything, all the buttons, that's all on your JSS box. So that's kind of how, if you put in plugins and you have it open in the self-service app, it just loads in that window. It's the same concept with everything that's within self-service. It's actually sitting on your server. So this image, rather than changing it within the application, is actually on your JSS box. And I'll let you know that I have Mac Mini servers hosting my JSS instances. So what you'll see is going to be based on a Mac server. If you're running Linux or Windows, your mileage is going to vary a little bit here, but chances are if you've gone through that server, you have an idea of where things are stored for Tomcat and your JSS. If you're on a Mac box, library/JSS, Tomcat Web Apps root. Root is where the actual JSS lives. All of the information for the JSS, including the web app that you use when you manage, also self-service. You'll see that there's an images folder, and within images there's a separate folder for self-service called self-service 2. There's lots of fun stuff in there, and if you are really bored or really creative, you could do a lot with it. I'm particularly interested in loginlogo.ping. And you'll see it actually looks a heck of a lot the same as the dock icon and app icon that we were just working with. So really all you need to do is take the icon that you've already made, save it with a new name, and throw it on your server. That's really it. Super easy. All the imagery has been really streamlined in the most recent version of self-service. So basically, if you can build one nice logo for yourself and spend some time with it and make it look nice, you can use it in a lot of places, and it's really easy to update the imagery. The trick is just knowing what things are called, and it takes a little bit of experimentation to find where those things are. So once I took that logo, I've saved it as a ping, I threw it on my JSS in that folder. Ta-da! I now have a login icon. The other cool thing about the JSS is all of the style sheets for all of those web pages for the JSS and for self-service all live in the same area. The folder it's within root, and it's called, let's see, there's root and then style sheets. And then within style sheets, you'll see that there's one that's called OSX self-service, and there's an iOS self-service. And admittedly, I have not played much with the iOS self-service. We don't manage any mobile devices at Volusion quite yet. As you probably could tell, because this workflow has been entirely OSX self-service. You can go in and look for what I have coined the Jamf blue, that Jamf blue that's everywhere. It's the hex code is 15294B. So you can go through you can go through all of those style sheets and look for that hex code. That's that blue color that's in the self-service background, and you can replace it with a color that you like if you just go and find the hex code. right? And there are lots of cool, there's colorhex.com, there are all sorts of really cool sites where you can just start with palettes and click through, or if you have color picker on Chrome or Firefox or things like that, you can go to your company webpage, you can just click on the colors and see what their color scheme is, or if you've got designers that you can talk to, you can be like, hey, so what's the color that you guys use in this logo so you can match it. I went through and I picked a nice kind of burgundy red for my background, why not? Just as an aside, you'll probably find if you're comfortable with CSS, you'll go through and you'll notice that when you resize the self-service app, you'll see that the login moves with the window. It's always in the middle. It's not static, which means that that element moves, which means it's its own element, which means it probably has its own background color. So you're probably going to find that if you want to change the background of your self-service app, that it's going to be in more than one place. You'll have to replace the color multiple times. Something that I ran into while doing this is that every once in a while, when I would replace the imagery, the permissions on the files would be mine. So I would get info and I would look at the sharing and permissions of the file, and I would find that it belonged to me or the local admin on my JSS box. And then I would go into self-service and nothing was showing up because the app server didn't have the permissions to read the files. So what I do every time I change anything in the JSS is I go up to root, I get info, I unlock it, and I apply the permissions to all the enclosed items. That way everything that I've changed gets the same permission as root, which is the website itself. Once you do that, ta-da, it's red now instead of blue, which is pretty cool. Volusion uses lots of blues, so I haven't actually done that with the Volusion self-service app, but it's really easy to do. And it does depend on your knowing a little bit of HTML and CSS to navigate around. If you want to learn HTML and CSS, get a Blogger blog or WordPress. That's a really great way to learn because you'll install a template and then you'll go, you know what, I want the sidebar to be a little wider. And then you'll start digging through and be like, how is the width put in here? And it's really good to learn. You can go in and tackle things, and it's a blog, so you're not going to break anything, but it's a great way to learn. Of course, there are also places online that you can go and learn stuff, but I've found that doing is learning for me. So I got a Blogger blog and I learned HTML. It's pretty handy. You'll also notice that there's that Jamf software logo at the bottom. That's in there too. So if you're really mean and you don't want to give Jamf any credit for this great app, you can go in and you can change it. I'm a big fan of transparency, so even though I'm making self-service my own, I still want the users to see that there was someone else there helping me, so I leave the Jamf software logo there. But you can go in and change it. I actually, if you go back through my Twitter feed, I went through and I have a dev JSS and I branded it with Moon Knight because I'm a comic book nerd, and I put his logo there. It's pretty cool. It's definitely doable. So let's talk plugins. It's the easiest way to brand self-service, and if you're sitting here and you're like, oh, I'm not a Photoshop person, I don't really know HTML and CSS all that well, I don't want to touch things on the server, like I don't want to do that. One of the easiest ways to brand self-service is to put everything you can think of that an employee would ever ask anybody in HR about in the plugins in the self-service app. It's so easy to do. You log into the JSS, you're probably pretty familiar with it. You go to computer management, self-service plugins. In there, there's a handy new button, and just create a new one. The display name is the title of the plugin. I don't know, I guess I'm more of a website person, so for me, if it was called title, it'd probably make a little bit more sense, but that display name is that main title that a user is going to see. The description is what's going to show up underneath, and it has to be pretty short. I would stick, this one is a little too long, and you'll see that when I show you what it looks like in there. I would stick to like 4 to 5 words, just right to the point. This one probably is a little too long. The priority number is the order that's going to show in. So for me, the HR portal that we use is like priority 1, it's right at the top. Because not all users are going to log into it all the time, and chances are they'll be like, hey, how do I get to that thing? Just open self-service, it's in there, don't worry about it. You'll want a pretty icon. Icons are relatively easy to make. All you need to use is preview to make an icon. Just find an image you like, make sure it's 128 by 128. I would just make everything pings. It makes life a lot easier. Not all of that stuff that you upload to the JSS will use JPEGs, so I just avoid them. Plus, JPEGs have compression, and sometimes image quality isn't as nice as you want. If you're really particular like me, you want it to look great, design it for the specific size that it's going to be, 128 by 128, keep it a ping. Ta-da! Now my Themysciran Amazonian self-service users, they can click on an overview and they can learn about Wonder Woman, because who doesn't want to know more about Wonder Woman? I love having as much stuff as possible load within self-service. It really is like a mini browser, so why not? If there's something really important, like the HR portal, I'll have it open in their default browser, right? I'll just have it, I'll select that option that says open in browser, but most of the stuff I'm going to have open within self-service itself. It kind of keeps them in there. It may even encourage them to keep clicking around if they see that they don't have to leave that app or go back to that app to find the stuff that they want. So deploying it, which may be a question that's on some of your minds. So when I deployed this to my users, I did not have it deploy automatically from the JSS because it's going to send that default self-service app, the one that we started with before we did all this fun stuff to make it look pretty. We want them to have the pretty one. So all you really need to do is create a policy within your JSS. Call it something that you recognize, make sure it's enabled, obviously. Enrollment complete trigger is what you'll want to use. You can make it once per computer if you want. It can be ongoing. It doesn't really matter all that much. It only matters if you have some kind of enrollment workflow that you're worried about with your users. And then throw the package in there. You can use Packager, or you can use Composer or whatever application you prefer to just throw it in some kind of package so that it can deploy through the JSS. Okay, so you've done all this work. How do you get your users to actually enroll and get this app and start using it? Send a nice email, and then send it again, and then probably a few more times, but space them out so they don't feel like you're spamming them, right? Be nice. I've sent out an initial email to my users that said, hey, great new service coming to Volusion. It's called the Volusion App Store. You're going to love it. You're going to get all your software in it. You're going to be able to help your machine with it. It's going to be fantastic. All you do is go to this URL, which is our jss.com/enroll, and just sign in with your corp credentials, and you're good, right? You'll get this app automatically. It'll have all these great features in it that you're going to love. You want to do it. And then they'll trickle in. You'll get the email notifications, oh, machine's enrolled, oh, that's nice. After a while, you'll send it out again, and then you'll probably have to contact people directly. I'm very I don't want to touch their machine if I don't have to. I managed to not have to touch anybody's machines to do it, which was great. I got about 113 users to enroll. It took a few weeks. I was very nice about it. I did not press people. I just sent them nice emails. This one may be a sticking point for some people, depending on your ecosystem, your IT ecosystem, but I had all of my users use their Active Directory login. They are so used to doing that. They have to log in with their directory login for everything. And part of what doing this for me, just conceptually, does for the user is know that it's legitimately a Volusion resource, because they use their directory login to get into their computers, to check their email, to use Link, to get to SharePoint Online, to get to file shares, to get to all of these Volusion services. So why not ensure that they understand that this is a Volusion resource by having them log in with their credentials? It's a part of their daily life that they're used to, so why not use it? Why not? And the other thing it does is ensures that the user knows that it's a Volusion thing. We're not just sending them off somewhere that they might not trust. If it uses their directory login, then it must be something that's specific to the company. This was my big selling point. Any software you want us to buy for you, you're going to get it through self-service, right? And what they may not have known is that when they opted into self-service, it meant that I could push it to their machines remotely through policies, but conceptually, for them it was, I need the self-service app so I can get what I want. I do put in applications that they need, like we haven't quite adopted the VPP program yet, so if they need Pages or Keynote or things like that, I've got our App Store version in there so that they can download it. It means we have to update it, but worse things have happened, right? I brought this up earlier. Sell it to new hires. Every week when we have new hire orientation, we're asked to come in and talk about IT services at Volusion. If I have a Mac user in there and Windows users, I love bragging about self-service. Because for so many places, the Mac users are kind of the small group, they're off to the side, they're kind of special cases. Like, not only are they special cases, they get special stuff. Not only do they have superior hardware, right? They get this great self-service app. Windows users don't get that, haha, right? I try not to do the divide and conquer thing all that much, but every once in a while it's nice in a Windows environment to have something special for my Mac users that they can really use. And sometimes even if there isn't a Mac user in there, I'll be like, hey, Mac users get self-service. Maybe someday Windows will have some kind of self-service thing. I don't know. We'll find out. Tips for you on how to get your users to self-enroll if you're in the situation like I was. Don't forget that self-service is the only part of the thing that they're going to see. So make sure you tell them about it. Instead of trying to scope out enrollment and try to cull IPs and SSH in and do all this stuff to enroll them. Be like, hey, you're going to get this self-service app, and it's awesome. So you definitely want to enroll, and you'll get this great app. And I know I'm repeating myself. I have a background in university-level instruction, so 3 times is always the charm, right? Tell them about self-service, and then tell them again about self-service, and then tell them another time about self-service, and all the great parts about it, right? 3 times usually works. Encourage users to have self-service there to troubleshoot. One of the most useful things I put in there is a really, really simple policy in the maintenance area of a policy where you go in and clear user cache, clear system cache, reboot the machine. Man, my machine is a hog. Everything's running really slowly, and Photoshop is looking kind of funny, and I don't know what's going on, and applications are taking forever to open. Like, hey, open self-service, run the self-help app, reboot your machine. Chances are you'll see things improve quite a bit. Put all of your procurement requests in self-service for them to download. Everything, just everything that's in there. We have VMware Fusion in there with a VM, because we have quite a few Mac users in development that do need to use Visual Studio, so we use VMs. We've got packages for all of the different Adobe applications, so that if for some reason they're having trouble logging into the Creative Cloud app on their computer, they can go into self-service, and if they're an approved user, I've got smart groups say like, hey, this person has Creative Cloud app on their machine, make sure they see these policies with these installers for Adobe, right? They can go in, they can reinstall things from there if they want. The great AD Passmon fork, changing Active Directory logins on Mavericks is such a pain, right? AD Passmon makes it so much easier. Hey, go in, get AD Passmon. Not only will it tell you when your password's going to expire, it'll give you a great way to reset your password and clear out your keychain stuff so that you don't get prompted every time you log in by local items, which is such a hassle, right? Put in tons of stuff in there that users are going to want, and then make them want it. Be a salesperson. Make your users want to use that stuff. And don't forget that you can use self-service yourself. I'm sure if you came to the self-service session that was yesterday by another user here in the Jamf Nation, you'll see how they utilize it for their Corp IT team. We do the same thing. Every once in a while when we image a machine, we don't necessarily want packages to be in the imaging process, but we do when we configure the machine for the user, want to have access to those things in case we want to add them. I put them all in a Corp IT tools category, and it's scoped to just the members of the Corp IT team so only they can see it. Also, for some reason in imaging, it didn't bind Active Directory. Oh, I'll put that in there too, so that I can rebind it really easily, not have to worry about moving computers and groups later. Adobe Creative Cloud stuff works great within self-service. It probably works better there than just about anywhere else when you're trying to deploy it because of how it's packaged, which I'm sure a lot of you have dealt with if you've dealt with Adobe stuff before. Just put everything in there that you would possibly want. You can even, with a very simple shell script, put in a bunch of application launch self-service policies. Hey, open directory utility, open activity monitor, open network preferences, open, all sorts of things. Open Chrome, opens, maybe you've got a Windows guy looking at a Mac and he doesn't even know where the applications folder is. I have no idea what a Finder is. How do I open this application for my user? Throw it in self-service. Hey, if you can just find self-service, if it's in the dock, which we put it in the dock of all of our users, you can just click on that self-service icon and it's got our logo on it so you know it's what you need, right? You can get to the stuff that you want out of it, which is really handy. We put all of our printers in here too. I know that sometimes printer policies is tricky with Mac users, especially if you've got a Windows environment managing, a Windows servers that are managing the printers. What we do is, on enrollment, every machine gets all of the drivers for all of the computers. We really only have a few models. We have Ricos, we have Canons, we have a few Brothers, so we don't have a ton of drivers for the machine, and they're pretty small, so we just put them on every machine, and then use a test machine to build those printer packages with Composer, and then throw them in self-service. So like, oh, how do I add the printer in marketing? Open up self-service, click that button, it'll add it to your computer, you'll be ready to go. I'll talk through a few troubleshooting things with self-service that some people may run into and I run into from time to time, which is sometimes things catch kind of weird when you start playing around with the imagery within self-service. Like if you notice up in this example, for some reason my Mac wiki and my Yammer Mac group icons are the same and they're not supposed to be, and I know this because I went in and put in new imagery. So how do I actually get this to change? Self-service creates a catch for itself and the user library catches. So if you've tried some of the self-service adjusting and you've gone in and the imagery isn't showing up correctly yet, chances are the old imagery is catched on the machine that you're working on. So you can just go to tilde library catches, your user catch folder, and you'll see that there's ComJam software self-service in there, and just trash that folder. It's just cached data. If you do that, you will, next time you open the app, create a new catch. And it'll grab catch all that imagery from the server. The other thing that ends up helping quite a bit, especially if you're testing out self-service plugins, is that you will need to run sudo jamf manage, because when it goes in and checks in is when it checks for new self-service plugins. Self-service plugins are little plists that your machine downloads from the JSS and saves in a folder to access. So if one of your self-service plugins isn't showing up yet, you need to run sudo jamf manage and it'll download it from the JSS, and you'll see now my imagery is correct, which is what I want. Something else that I'll just mention very briefly, if you need to go through and update the self-service app, like you notice something totally different between version 9.3 and 9.4 and 9.5, and you want to redeploy the actual self-service application, I would throw in a flush user catches and update inventory in the policy that pushes out that new package to your users. That way the old imagery isn't catched on their machine, so that when they reopen it the next time, they'll see the right stuff. The added benefit is that it'll clear a bunch of other cached data. Sometimes that folder gets to 2 or 3 gigs, and it can really impact the computer performance quite a bit when they're running a bunch of applications at the same time that are trying to talk to the cache for information. So clearing out that user cache when you send out a self-service update policy is probably pretty helpful to ensure that they're seeing what you want them to see. I know that was a lot, and now we only have like 10 minutes. So let's go right to Q&A if you guys have any questions for me. And I guess one of these guys is gonna manage that for me, so I can just stand here and make up answers.
Okay. Start over here.
Do you have any automation process to redo the updates every time self-service changes?
My automation is, I save all the images locally. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Repeat the question, sorry.
So the question was on automating updates for self-service.
Short answer, no, not yet. If there are really clever folks out there that can script stuff like that and want to work with me on it, that would be awesome. The long answer is I just save copies of all the images that I need, and it takes about 20 seconds, like, oh, just copy this here, repackage it, redeploy it. It's just me, and I don't have a huge fleet, so I can give myself 5 minutes to update it and redeploy it if I need to. Once you create that imagery, really the time-intensive part of it is getting that logo to look the way you want, but then that one logo ends up being in a lot of places, so it's pretty easy to just recopy stuff over if you need to. Not the best answer, but that's the current answer. It may change.
Over here.
Hi. Is there any particular reason that you're not replacing the self-service app on the JSS directly, and that you're just doing it as a completely manual process?
No, I'm guessing you could if you packaged it and saved it in the right place. It's just worked best for me in my environment when I did the initial enrollment, and I'm the only person that worked with Casper, and I hadn't done the CCA yet, so I hadn't learned all the fun tricks. You probably could. That's a good point. As you see, if you're comfortable with going into that JSS box, and I know not a lot of people are, and you may not even have access to it. You may have like systems administrators who are like, nope, you don't touch the servers, right? So your mileage is going to vary a bit on that. I like having control over the policies, and I like seeing when they run, and I like seeing who has it and who doesn't. So for me, the logs and the policies of sending it out via policy in the JSS is a little more useful for my workflow, but you may find it's a little more automated and easy for you if you just go into the server and replace it. Just zip it back up into a .tar, throw it in that folder, and just have the JSS take care of it for you when the machines enroll.
Thank you. And is there any particular reason that you're not replacing the self-service app on the JSS directly, and that you're just doing it as a completely manual process?
No, I'm guessing you could if you
Anything in the upper deck?
I think there's one over here.
Got one over here?
Just as a follow-up to the first question that came from over here, in your case, because you're using a Mac, you could use Compose or package up your changes to your JSS and just redeploy that as a package to your server to update your back-end system when you update your JSS.
That's true. Yeah, and I bet with Automator and other tools like that, you could probably come up with workflows that will do stuff like that too.
Another one over here.
Do you have, are there any Photoshop templates available for some of this stuff, or do you find anything available pretty please?
I could. So really the main image now, it got so easy with the update with 9.5. It's really that one circular icon. Yeah, I could take that PSD file and throw it on Box or something, and so that people can use it if you don't want to try to build it yourself. Sure.
Anything else? Going once? Oh,
It's dark over there, sorry.
there we go.
Previously, updating the icon progress bar area, I've had problems related to code signing, since unlike most of the rest, that actually is checked by code signing. Have you run into that?
I have had no problems with that yet, but now that we've talked about it, I'm probably going to want to make sure I'm ready.
I just haven't tried it in a while.
Okay.
I essentially gave up and omitted that step from the workflow, so I don't know if it has changed in the recent versions.
Not that I've run into, and I'm really paranoid about permissions, so once I go through and I do any changes within the app, I will, once I'm like building that package in Composer with the app, I'll go in and make sure that all the files within the app have general permissions, like system read write or whatever, that it would be in the application folder, so that I make sure like, oh, this one folder belongs to Emily Kozlik. So now the app can't talk to it because this machine doesn't have that user on it, you know. So going in and doing apply permissions to enclosed items will sometimes get you around some issues, but I haven't run into a code signing issue, so I don't really have a good answer for that, unfortunately.
I think we had one over here somewhere. Oh, you got one over there?
You mentioned that you change things
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing. It totally gets overwritten.
Can you repeat that question?
Oh, the question was when you make changes on the JSS in the root folder for some of the imagery that's hosted on the box, if when you run a JSS update, if it rewrites those images, and yes, it does. So my very clever workflow for that is in the pictures folder on my JSS, I have all of my imagery already appropriately named and ready to copy over, and I just drag and drop, adjust permissions. It takes about a minute. So that's all I do right now. I know that there gotta be more clever people than me out there that can automate it. I'm fine with drag and drop at the moment. Oh, I guess the other thing I'll add to that, if you're in a clustered environment, if you have more than one JSS, if you have like a parent and a child or some kind of situation like that, you'll wanna make those JSS changes on both, so that you make sure that, you know, if one is down and they're talking to the other one, that it's getting the right information. So I would make any changes to both, or multiple instances if you need to, which for those of you that are in a big clustered environment is probably when automation would be useful. And I'm curious about it now, so I'm not clever enough to do it, but I'll find someone that is.
Anyone else? Nope, one over here.
Could you talk a little bit more about some of the other tasks that you automate using self-service, like maintenance?
He asked about having me talk about some of the other maintenance tasks that I use with my team within self-service. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. My Windows guys really don't know a whole lot about Macs at all. Like, they don't use them at all. They don't really touch the Macs all that much. So any app that I could possibly think of that they would want to open that isn't just right in the applications folder, I'll put in just a simple bash shell of open, blah, blah, blah. So open directory utility, like if they need to rebind the machine for some reason and they don't use the bind to active directory policy that I have in Corp IT, I'll have them open directory utility so they can unbind and rebind if they need to. Activity monitor, because a lot of them don't know how. Console, I put that in there too, because they are usually at a loss of how to look at logs for things. So here's the console, you can click on that. It's really easy to steal icons from all those apps too. So I go in and steal the icons right from the apps and use them in my self-service so that they know what it looks like, and hopefully we'll be able to find it in the future. Every Creative Cloud application that's used in our environment is in there so that we have it. So if we need to reinstall something, we've got a handy installer right there that we can run. VMware, we have a package with just the application and one bundled with a VM inside of it, which is enormous, but sometimes it takes a while to build a VM, so it's nice to have a generic, like vanilla VM to deploy with it. AD Password Monitor has been huge in our environment because our users will be at home and VPN will say, hey, your password's expired. And they get back and then their keychain won't shut up. Like, what do we do with this local items thing? And I don't want to lose my keychain and I don't know what to do and I don't know what that password was. And AD Password's been amazing.
What was that tool? Because that's one of the big problems, right?
AD Passmon, who forked that? Someone in here knows. Ben Toms, the genius Ben Toms. He is like the Mac admin savior, right? AD Passmon, his fork is amazing because the original AD Passmon just let you reset your password and it would talk to the directory for you and update it and then update the login password and system preferences. His fork actually goes and checks the keychain, sees if it's locked, see if the password matches. If it doesn't, you can either put in your old password and update the keychain password, or to let you just create a new password. It says, like, if you don't know the old one, just ignore the first field, put in your new password, verify, it'll create a new keychain for you. It's brilliant. Yeah, AD Passmon.
That's awesome. That's a majority of my support.
Right? Yeah, password changes in an Active Directory environment on Mavericks is just a nightmare. AD Passmon was like a dream come true.
Well, oh, one.
Yeah, I was going to mention with regard to the building thing, if you do mentions like you're doing it, why you're not having that problem. Pretty much anything owned by root is an order. Second suggestion is owned by root.
Yeah, that one was more of a comment that if you go in and adjust permissions with root on the JSS, you'll get around a lot of the code signing and other weird quirks that you might run into if you're going in and having fun with your JSS box, like I like to.
Your test JSS part.
Yes.
And maybe the production one sometimes when I should.
Break the test one first.
I do, yeah, and I've put it on a VM that I take snapshots of so that if I really bork my dev one and I want it back, I can go back to a snapshot. I just use VMware Fusion on like an iMac in my workroom and just throw it on there so that I can play with it. Yeah, definitely test stuff out, and I don't know if I can stress this enough in like the last minute and a half that I have. Back everything up, always. If you're not confident with going into your JSS and looking for files and adjusting them, do what you're comfortable with in your environment. It's really fun to do stuff like this, but also you want to make sure that you're not going to negatively impact your user or your workflow with some of the stuff that you're doing. So back everything up, and in multiple places, and in places that other people can get to. And if you're really nice, screenshot and document your workflows so that your colleagues can see all the hard work that you're doing and give you a pat on the back that you probably need that you don't get that often.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all for coming.